You have $100. Not $10,000. Not a sudden inheritance from someone you barely knew. Not a bonus that showed up at just the right moment. $100. The kind of money that slips away over a weekend without leaving a trace. The kind you've spent on things you can't recall by Monday. Small enough to feel irrelevant, tight enough to feel inconvenient. Both at the same time. This is where it begins. Not with a flawless strategy, not with a perfectly researched account you've analyzed for months. It begins with $100 and a choice that feels almost too minor for the scale of what you want to build. You make it anyway. You set up the automatic transfer. You choose a simple index fund. You don't spiral into overthinking, because that's what stopped you before. You press confirm. Nothing changes. The account shows $100. The market shifts 0.3% and now it reads $99.70. You check it again. And again. Before bed, one more time. This is the starting point, and it looks nothing like you expected. The account just sits there. You keep adding $100 each month like you're watering something you're not even sure is growing. Some months it rises. Some months it dips. 6 months pass, and the balance is $578. You already knew it would land somewhere around there. $578 doesn't transform your life. It's not a number you mention to anyone. It exists quietly inside an app you now check less often, because checking doesn't give you anything back. This is the phase no one highlights, because there's nothing exciting to highlight. The first 6 months of investing $100 a month isn't a story. It's a routine. And routines, before they produce results, only produce themselves. You're building consistency in a place where there's no visible proof yet. No reflection showing progress. Still, you show up. You move the $100. The system takes it without reaction. There's another version of you that stops here. Not with a dramatic decision, not with a clear ending. Just one missed month because things felt tight. Then another. The account freezes at $578 for months. You think about it less. Eventually, not at all. A year goes by. The habit fades. The $578 remains, barely growing because it was never fully put to work. That version of you isn't careless. That version is normal. The distance between knowing what to do and continuing when nothing rewards you for it. That's where most people quietly drop off. You don't. You don't know yet what that choice is worth, but you will. 12 months in, you've added $1,200. The account shows $1,312. The market gave you an extra $112. That's it. An amount you could earn in a single afternoon. Not impressive. You recognize that and continue anyway. Because what actually happened in that first year isn't reflected in the balance. You built tolerance for delayed rewards, something most people around you haven't developed. Each month, that $100 could have been spent easily. Instead, it became a contribution. Not because you're more disciplined than everyone else, but because you made a clear decision about a specific amount and kept repeating it. That repetition is the real foundation, not the $1,312. You also discovered something important. Your life didn't fall apart without that $100. The month kept moving. Most of the things you thought required it never showed up. And when they did, you adjusted. You found a way. That $100 was never as essential as it felt. It only seemed that way. Most people never challenged that assumption. You did, 12 times. And 12 times, it didn't hold. That realization is worth more than the extra $112. Now you're 26 months in. You've contributed $2,600. The account sits at $3,100. It's starting to feel real. Not life-changing, but tangible. A number with presence. Something that didn't exist before, now taking shape. And somewhere in the second year, something shifts. You're not checking out of worry anymore. You're checking because you're curious. You stop scanning for disaster and start paying attention to progress. That shift is psychological, and for most people it takes longer than it did for you. Some never get there. Two investors can hold the exact same fund, one checks from anxiety, the other from curiosity. Same numbers, completely different experience. And when the market drops, they won't respond the same way. Because the market does drop. It always does. This time it falls 14% over 11 weeks, beginning in a month you'd rather not revisit for reasons that have nothing to do with investing. You watch $380 disappear. The account that once showed $3,100 now reads $2,670. You feel it somewhere between your chest and your stomach, not sharp, not dull, just there. You let it sit. You don't sell. You move the $100 like you always do, because the schedule doesn't adjust itself to market conditions. That $100 now buys more shares than it did a few months ago. You don't celebrate it. You don't try to reframe it. You just continue. 8 months later, the market recovers. Your account reads $3,900. The shares you bought during the drop are now worth more than what you paid. The discipline you kept during the decline worked quietly in the background. It always does. And you'll forget that the next time it happens. That's fine, as long as your behavior doesn't change. Year 3 closes. You've contributed $3,600. The account shows $4,750. You're up $1,150 beyond what you've put in. It's not dramatic, but it's real. The gap between your contributions and your total is widening, and it's widening in your favor. Over time, that gap will grow faster. Eventually, the returns stop feeling like a small extra and start to resemble a second contributor. As if someone else is depositing money into your account alongside you every month. That someone is time. Time doesn't skip contributions. It doesn't panic. It doesn't sell at the bottom. You're 29 now. 60 months of $100 contributions. Total invested, $6,000. Account balance, $8,200, assuming an average annual return of about 10%, not guaranteed, not promised, but historically observed in broad markets. $8,200. You've gained $2,200 beyond what you contributed. You now hold more savings than many people do. Not because you earned more. Not because you had better circumstances. But because you started a specific habit at a specific moment and kept it going. Through a year that felt like nothing was happening. Through a drop that felt personal. Through a stretch in year 4 where pausing seemed reasonable, and you didn't. Here's what $8,200 isn't. It's not retirement. It's not a full down payment. It's not financial independence. Some will say it's insignificant in the context of long-term wealth. They'll be technically right and completely miss the point. Because $8,200 isn't the outcome. It's the evidence. Evidence that something meaningful can be built from very little, over time, without luck, without a high income, and without a perfect plan. Evidence that the system works if you keep feeding it. Evidence that you are someone who keeps feeding it. That identity matters more than the number. The number can fluctuate. The identity carries forward. 5 years in, the account is growing. But something else is growing alongside it, something the market doesn't measure. Your relationship with money has changed. Not because you suddenly have a lot of it, but because you're more aware of it. You notice where it goes. You recognize the difference between spending that creates something lasting and spending that only fills a moment. You're not depriving yourself. This isn't about restriction. You took the trip. You bought the thing. You just did it within a structure that protected the $100 because the $100 is no longer optional. It's not a sacrifice anymore. It's a constant. Your patience has changed too. You've now seen markets rise and fall. And your response to both has shifted. You don't react the way you used to. You observe. You understand that a red number on a random Tuesday isn't a signal about the future. It's a snapshot of the present. And the present moves on. The future doesn't care how Tuesday felt. Your conversations about money start to sound different. You listen more carefully when people talk about investing. You've formed opinions, now earned ones. When someone says they're waiting for the right time to begin, you don't push back or try to convince them. You remember what waiting felt like. You remember the years before you started. You say something simple, something true, and then you let it go. And then there's something harder to name. The distance. A quiet separation begins to form between you and people around you who aren't building anything. Not because you've changed into something better, but because your priorities have shifted in ways that show up in small, daily decisions. And those small decisions, repeated over time, create a different kind of life. Sometimes it feels like a kind of loneliness you can't fully explain. You're moving in a direction that others aren't, and the movement is slow enough that no one really sees it, not even you. Until one day you look back and realize how far you've come. You're 34 now. 10 years in. Total contributions, $12,000. Account balance, around $20,500. You've gained $8,500 beyond what you put in. Now the returns are starting to matter. In the past year alone, your portfolio added roughly $1,700 without any extra effort from you. No raise. No side income. Just the result of years of steady contributions compounding into something larger. This is the part that's explained over and over in books, podcasts, planning sessions, but it rarely feels real until you see it in your own account. Your returns are beginning to approach your monthly input. You still add $100, but in an average year, your investments are generating the equivalent of about $140 a month on their own. Your money is now producing money. Not at a pace that transforms your life overnight, but at a pace you can feel. And more importantly, a pace that's increasing. Think about what that $100 a month actually required. You didn't overhaul your life. You didn't move back home. You didn't take on extra jobs or give up everything you enjoy. You adjusted one consistent piece of your spending. 10 years later, you have $20,500. A portfolio that's growing faster than your contributions. And a habit that no longer feels like effort. Because habits that last long enough stop feeling like habits. They become part of who you are. You're 44 now. 20 years in. Total contributions, $24,000. Account balance, about $76,000. You've gained $52,000 beyond what you invested. The gap between what you put in and what you have is now more than double your total contributions. You didn't do anything extraordinary to get here. No perfect timing. No stock picking. No lucky break or special access. Just $100 a month, and time. And time did what it always does when left undisturbed. $76,000 is no longer abstract. It's a number that carries weight. A number that can influence decisions. A foundation you can actually build on, if you choose to. And here's what's easy to overlook at this stage. The acceleration is just getting started. This isn't linear growth. It's exponential. And the exponential curve only begins to reveal itself after years of consistency. In year 1, your returns were about $112. By year 10, they were roughly $1,700 annually. By year 20, the account is generating close to $7,000 per year. $7,000 a year, from $100 a month. You're contributing $1,200 a year, and the account is adding several times that on its own. The system you built has become the primary driver. You're no longer doing most of the work. In a way, you've become a passenger, and it all started with a single $100 transfer on an ordinary evening, in a place you no longer live. Now you're 54. 30 years in. Total contributions, $36,000. Account balance, around $227,000. Over time, consistency and compounding created $191,000 that didn't come from your job, wasn't deposited manually, and wasn't handed to you. It came from repetition. From staying in motion. At 54, with $227,000 growing at an average of 10%, your portfolio generates about $22,700 per year without touching the principal. That's nearly $1,900 a month. From something that began as $100. The system you built out of spare change is now producing income that starts to resemble what many people earn from work. And you're not done yet, there are still years before the traditional idea of retirement even arrives. You're 64 now. 40 years in. Total contributions, $48,000. Account balance, roughly $637,000 at a historically average return. $637,000 from $48,000. The remaining $589,000 wasn't earned in the usual sense. It wasn't traded for hours or effort. It grew from time, and from your decision not to stop. From thousands of small choices each month when that $100 could have gone somewhere else, but didn't. Every month felt insignificant. Every contribution felt small. Every downturn you stayed through. Every year that passed without anything dramatic to show for it. Every quiet, automatic transfer that no one noticed. It all accumulated. It all compounded. It all led here. You've been looking at numbers. The numbers are real. They matter. But they're not the point. The point is who you became in the process. This is about choosing small and consistent over large and delayed. Because large and delayed is what most people wait for. A higher income. A bigger opportunity. A future moment where it finally feels meaningful enough to begin. That moment rarely arrives. And if it does, the habit of waiting usually arrives with it. The money gets absorbed into a life that expanded to consume it. And nothing lasting is built. Small and consistent isn't a fallback strategy. It's not what you do when you can't do more. It's the mechanism itself. It's how this works. The person who invests $100 a month and the person who plans to invest $1,000 a month someday don't arrive at the same place. One accumulates decades of compounding and a built-in discipline. The other accumulates delays, interruptions, and the quiet realization that time was the only resource that couldn't be replaced. Time doesn't wait for ideal conditions. It works with whatever you give it. You gave it $100. You gave it every month. You gave it consistently, for decades. And in return, it gave you something that $100 alone could never create. Something waiting could never produce. Something shortcuts can't replicate. It gave you proof. Proof that the smallest version of the right decision, repeated without interruption, becomes something that looks like luck from the outside, but feels like discipline from the inside. In the end, it's not extraordinary at all. It's just $100. Every month. Starting when you decided to begin. And that was enough.